Hi there, this is John and welcome to SyncApps by Cazoomi. In this video today, we'll talk about how Mailchimp for Salesforce works using SyncApps. So first things first, what is this integration and what are the benefits that you can get? Right, so the function of this integration is that we serve as the middleware or the bridge between both systems like Salesforce and Mailchimp, so that instead of doing the manual imports and exports, we do those automatically for you on a scheduled or manual basis based on your preference. And the key benefits that you can have, or you can benefit using SyncApps is first the contacts, leads, and accounts management. So for this one here, we are using the email address of this, the records in Salesforce, so that we can sync them over to Mailchimp or even vice versa. You can also segment your Salesforce records to groups or tags in Mailchimp using the Salesforce campaigns, list views, or if you don't, if you want to have a very specific syncing of records to Mailchimp, then you can then use the filter and segmentation feature in SyncApps. Alright, so for us to integrate both systems, we do have this setup so that you can connect both Salesforce and Mailchimp. Then you will need to configure based on your use case here. So in Salesforce, just make sure that it's API enabled. Right, so to know if you're API enabled, you'll need to check to what edition are you subscribed to. So for example, you're on their professional edition, then that means that it's not API enabled by default. So you'll need to reach out to your Salesforce account rep and purchase their web service API. And if you're on the enterprise edition in Salesforce, then you're all good with it because it's already API enabled. Right, so you can also test your Salesforce, instance here using the sandbox account. So before connecting, just click the sandbox and then click the connect button. But if you prefer using your, production account, you can just, connect directly here using the OAuth 2. Right, so on this, what do you want to sync here? These are the following object types that SyncApps support. So the first one is the contacts, leads, and accounts. So if you're syncing these three object types, then you'll need to create three separate setups because we can only integrate one object type per integration setup. All right, so for this instance, we'll be using contact. Okay, so by default, SyncApps will sync all your contacts to your audience, to your specified main audience in step 2. So the best practice really is by using a Salesforce campaign or list view. So that first is that you can segment those as a contact, as a tag or group, Mailchimp. And second is that you can only limit the number of contacts that will be syncing to your audience. So to know if it's a group or tag in Mailchimp, then that will be in step 2 of the integration setup under the segmentation method, this one here. Okay, so this is in step 2. So heading back to step 1, so just make sure that you have selected the the Salesforce campaign here. So if in case that the Salesforce campaign is not exposed as one of the options, you'll need to check if that Salesforce campaign is active or marked as active. Then if it's not, you'll need to mark it as active. Head back here and click the refresh campaigns and select it. So in this instance, I have selected this one here, this Salesforce campaign. All right. Okay, so the next feature that our subscribers are loving today is the campaign response feature, or syncing back the metrics like those opens, clicks, and bounces back to your Salesforce, account. So the function of this feature is that we can be able to, to sync directly the responses from the Mailchimp campaign so that your CRM team or your sales team will no longer, log into Mailchimp to see the engagements of those campaigns. So on this part here, there are several sync modes. So the first one is create Salesforce campaign. Right. So for this one here, you will need to, to set up the campaign layout in Salesforce. Don't worry about it because I will post the link on how to set this up on the description box below. So for the create Salesforce campaign, so let's assume that you have already set up the campaign layout in Salesforce. So if you're sending campaigns to your audience that is within the rolling 30 days, we will create a Salesforce campaign with the same name of that Mailchimp campaign here. Right, so let me go to the campaigns. Right, so this will be, the naming convention in Salesforce will be with the same name of that Mailchimp campaign. Okay. All right, so the HTML file or the template of that, newsletter campaign will be attached in the HTML file here under the attachments, and then the campaign members will be your recipients of that campaign. And when you click the view all, you can then see the recipients here, their engagements, like who open, click, or bounce from the email. And then on the contact record itself, or on the contact or lead level, you can see the engagements here under the campaign history. So if you're selecting, the create activity as the sync mode, so we will sync it directly to the, activity timeline of the contact record or lead record in Salesforce, just like this one here. So let me open a sample here, open email, then you can then see the, the task here. Right, so for the next one, which is create Salesforce campaign plus activity, we will create a Salesforce campaign together with the activity as well. And for the fourth option here, this is if you don't have the campaign object in Salesforce. For example, you're using Apto, which is a built-in Salesforce platform. So you might need to select the create activity or contact lead notes. So for this one here, what we will do is that we will attach the responses directly to your notes and attachments of the context. So just make sure that you have this one here, the notes and attachments to your related lists on the contact page layout, so that we can be able to sync the, the responses here. And lastly is the bring back marketing metrics only. This is the same with, create Salesforce campaign, but the difference is just that this will sync over the overall numbers of, overall clicks, opens, and bounces from that specific Mailchimp campaign to your Salesforce campaign. So the example of it is, let me show you here, campaigns. Right, details. Then you'll just need to make sure that you have added the number fields for opens, clicks, and bounces on the campaign page layout, and you'll need to map these in step 4 of the integration setup. Right. And scrolling down below, these are the optional features here. So if you have some specific use case, you can always reach out to us through support@cazoomi.com. Right, and on this specific part here, this is mainly for Mailchimp to Salesforce contact creation, contact or lead creation. So if you want them to be created as a contact from Mailchimp to Salesforce, just create contact, or if a lead, select lead, and the third one if you have the specific use case. Alright, so if you're done with the setup in step 1, you can head over to step 2 by clicking the next step. Right, so in step 2, so the first thing that you'll need to do is you just need to grab the API key on the Mailchimp side. So to grab that one, you can just hover over to the signal tooltip and follow the instructions here. Right, so once you're connected, you can then see the available audiences here for the integration. So the purpose for this audience is that SyncApps will sync, like for example, for this specific setup. So SyncApps will sync your Salesforce account or org to this specific audience. And if you have enabled the Salesforce campaigns or list views like that, we will create those as a group or tag under this audience. Segmentation method. This is how SyncApps will segment your Salesforce campaigns, list views, checkboxes, or the segments from step 5 to your Mailchimp audience. So the available segmentation methods are the following: Mailchimp groups, use tags, and use GDPR. For the use Mailchimp groups, we will automatically create a my group category, my groups, this one, and then those selected list views, campaigns, or even the checkboxes will be synced to this, my groups group category here. But if you want to sync it to an existing, group category in Mailchimp, for example, you want to sync it to the VIPs here, just specify it on this, text box here, so that once the sync runs, we can then sync your segments to that, Mailchimp group category. So the other use case is that you have selected multiple list views or campaigns in step 1. So just enable this one here, and then you can then sync those to specific group categories in Mailchimp. For example, the first campaign or list view will be synced to this group category named My Groups. The second one is for the VIPs. So what you're gonna need to do is to enable this, toggle this, option here, and then specify the name of that group category. Same as well on the next one here. If you want that to be synced over to another group category, then just toggle this one and then specify the group category. Next is use tags. So if you're using tags as the segmentation method, we will automatically create those Salesforce campaigns, list views, the checkboxes, or even the filters in step 5 and the segments to the tags portion of your audience with the same name here. There are some instances that you want to use the segments feature in Mailchimp. So how you can do that with this integration is through those, groups, tags, or even the custom fields that we have synced over. So let me give you an example here. So for the custom fields, I have mapped the department field from Salesforce to Mailchimp. So as you can see here, I already mapped them. So once the sync is completed, we will auto-populate those fields or those mapped fields in Mailchimp. So how you can do that one under the segments is just click the segments here, then create segment. Then look first for that, for example, the Salesforce campaign that you have selected in step 1. So in this instance, I have selected the 2021 to 2022 contacts. So I should select all of this one here and then add a filter. Okay, so it should be all. Then look for the department field and enter the field value of it. Then preview segment. So now, once I have previewed the segment, these are the following contacts under that group that do have that custom field, which is the department field. This feature in step 2 of the setup that says need to update Salesforce when subscribers update their profiles in Mailchimp is very useful, especially when you're using the CRM checkbox for field segmentation or for group segmentation, or probably the field mapping, so that it will work or the updates will work bidirectionally. So let me give you an example here. Alright, so in Salesforce, I have these 3 checkboxes for group preferences in Mailchimp. And then in step 1 of the setup, I have selected this feature, which is use Salesforce checkbox fields for Mailchimp group segmentation. So as you can see here, I have mapped the checkbox A to group A in Mailchimp. Then in step 2 of the setup, as you can see, I have also specified the group category in which this, group that I have mapped belongs to, right? So when I run the SyncApps will place the record to that group in Mailchimp, which is group A. And then when I edit this, for example, I am the subscriber or I am the admin. So I have removed myself from this group in Mailchimp. So once I click the refresh, or probably let's give it like a 5 seconds or something like that. Then in Salesforce, as you can see here, it's still checked, right? So when you click the refresh field or the refresh icon here, SyncApps will then automatically uncheck that checkbox in Salesforce through the Mailchimp webhooks. So in step 3 of the integration setup, these are just optional, features. Okay, so these features are mostly tailored on the free plan and some on the basic and professional plans. And in step 4, this is for the field mapping. So in other words, we are mirroring out the contacts, leads, or account information to that record in Mailchimp. So by default, we will sync over the email address, first name and last name. So if you want to map over for example, the job title or the donor type from Salesforce to Mailchimp, you can do that one here in step 4. Right, so the fields that are available here are depending on the object type that you have selected. So say for example, this setup is syncing the contacts, right? So the fields that are available here are based on what you have on your contact page layout in Salesforce. And if you don't have the fields here yet, might need to make sure that you have created them in Mailchimp. Right, so in step 5 of the integration setup, this is if you're not using the Salesforce campaigns or list views or checkboxes for groups or tags preferences. This is the best alternative for that one. For example, for filtering the Salesforce to Mailchimp, okay? So the segment name is equals to to group or tag. So just make sure that you have specified or selected the segmentation method in step 2. All right, so enter the segment name here. So for example, group A, and enter the filters here. For example, you're filtering out based on the contact owner. Okay, so this means that whenever the sync runs or after the sync is completed, we will automatically create this group or tag in Mailchimp together with the Salesforce records that will match the filters here. For example, all contacts with the contact owner John will be synced to this group or tag in Mailchimp. So if you want to add multiple filters for each segment, you can add a filter, or if you want to add multiple groups or tags in Mailchimp, you can also do this one as well. Add a new tag. So this is very similar in setting up the reports in Salesforce for doing the manual imports and exports via CSVs like that. It's just that you'll just need to do this in SyncApps so that we can automatically sync them in your Mailchimp audience. And the filtering from Mailchimp to Salesforce, one of the the use cases for this one is, for example, you have this sign up forms in Mailchimp, right? And it will land directly to your audience. And if you only want to sync the specific ones, for example, lead sources web, like that. So all the records, for example, all the records that has the lead source web, those will only be the ones that will be syncing back to Salesforce if the email address does not exist. Right, so by the way, let me insert this to you so you don't need to worry about the duplicates, because in SyncApps, we're using the email address. So which means that if this email address already exists in both systems, then we'll just marry them. So the time we will create new contacts in Mailchimp is that if the email address does not exist yet. And there are some instances in Salesforce like 3 records, for example, are using the same email address. So when the sync runs, SyncApps will pick up the first one to Mailchimp. So that will be the only one that will be syncing, and the other 2 will be ignored. All right. So the last step is the sync scheduling. Right. So this is where you're gonna decide on how often would you like to run the sync. So the best practice really is around 1 hour, or if you want like once a day, just place 24 there, because if you leave this blank here, then that means that you will need to run the sync manually. And these are optional features here. The first one, want to migrate records based on specific date criteria. This is a very powerful feature that you can use for the integration for testings, or probably if you want it live like that. So for example, let me enable this feature. So let me specify a date here, for example, October 1st. So this means that SyncApps will only sync those contacts or leads or accounts that were created starting October 1st today. Right, so once you're done with the setup, just click the finish button and it will lead you here to the setup page. Okay, so just click the sync now button and you're all set. So if you need help or if you have some questions on how to set up properly your integration setup, you can always reach out to us through support@cazoomi.com, or you can go to your setup dashboard or SyncApps dashboard. Then you can then see the contact support team button to create a ticket or book your session to book a call with us.